Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Today I have with me Brig Arun Sahgal, who's going to talk to us about India's changing equations in the global flux. And the global flux is pretty strong, and it just got refluxed with Syria last week. And it actually changes a lot of complexions. And I'm sure he'll factor all these in today's talk. So at the outset, before I set the flow for the topic, good evening to you and welcome to Ghana Short. We
Thank
are
you very
living
much.
in very
As
interesting.
usual, it's an honor to be on your show. A privilege.
Thank you, sir. I'll just give a small introduction and then I'll hand over the whole
Yeah.
thing to you. So I'll yield the floor to you. And let's look at this thing. The picture I put up. You see a classic thing which we've been talking of. We've been talking of this, that this cartoon represents India, USA, Russia, and China pulling at the four corners of the globe. And it represents the big powers which are emerging or which are there already. Incidentally, this cartoon is the conception of a Chinese artist. This is the way Chinese think of how great powers of the future are. And this cartoon is not new, it's 2 years old. It's just that many times we in India don't realize what we are. But having said that, let's go to the next thing. Sometime last year, we started speaking of the global quadrilateral, comprising of USA, China, India, and Russia. If I go into a little detail, the relationship between USA and China is one of increasing animosity. The one between China and India has potents of a thaw, but full of distrust. Increasing friendship is what marks Russia and India, with President Putin set to come to India shortly. And of course, uh, the relationship between USA and Russia is one of ambiguity, which is now setting in. 6 months back, the things were different. Now it's slightly different. Now, along the quadrilateral, there's a push-pull equation between India and USA. That everyone knows. There's no need to recount, but it is there, and there is a growing interdependence between China and Russia. And many people think it is Russia which is dependent on China and not the other way around. But I might like to add that it is interdependence more. Now, it is in this context that a few uncertainties have been thrown in and the flux has appeared. The first point of flux is the Trump presidency. Everyone talks of the Trump presidency. Everyone knows many funny things will happen, but no one knows how things will pan out. So the flux starts here. And then, of course, Russia is still entangled in the Ukraine war and as it faces the Syrian debacle. It's a debacle, there's no doubt about it. So a huge lot of flux has been added with this debacle it is now faced. Look at China. One might think China is out of the whole problem and happy. No, there are severe economic headwinds, and these headwinds are internal, they're not external. There's social unrest, which we never heard of in China, and there are internal tensions, and these are political in nature. So, actually, China is going through a lot of issues, though it gives a different exterior or whole story. In India, we have weak neighbors, problematic neighbors, and we have our own problems. It is in this context that everything is changing. Things are changing for India, and things are changing for the world, and the global geopolitical scene is changing very fast. What was there 6 months back is not there today, right? And one has to be light on the feet and fast in the head to understand what's going on so that we can chart our way forward. Uh, with this as a background, I request Brigadier Arun Sahgal, sir, please take over. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Actually, you've done me a big favor. You have set the ground, you have set the narrative also. So I just take on from where you have sort of left. In my presentation, I'll look at the global order from the perspectives, some of them which have been outlined by General Shankar. First, I'm looking at major disruptions. Then I'm looking at growing China-US competition. Then I'm looking at Indo-Pacific and emerging realignment of power. Indo-US equations, how they might pan out under Trump. US alliance system in East Asia and Australasia. ASEAN, developments in West Asia, India's neighborhood. And then I will, in the end, talk about what does all this mean for India. Uh, as brought about by that wonderful slide which General Shankar has just now shown, the world is in a state of flux. The world is divided into two blocks. There is a Western bloc comprising US plus Atlantic powers, essentially Europe and NATO. And the second is the Eastern bloc, so one is the comprises China and Russia. And there is a third bloc which is there but not powerful in terms of a power balancer, that is the global south. Both the groups are in a state of flux. US power and influence is being increasingly challenged. It is not gaining currency anywhere in any of its endeavors, be it Europe, Ukraine, or even in the Middle East. Now we are awaiting for Trump's MAGA initiative, Make America Great Again, and the economic reorientation that he's planning to do. The important thing to note in this whole scheme of things as they pan out on the eve of 2025 is this, that there will be changes in the economic power and influence. The economic power and influence will shift from military oriented power structure to more economic oriented power structure, where President Trump will use the leverages of American economic power and influence to create equities for the United States, reduce tensions globally, and deal more in economic terms with these challenges rather than in military terms. There is also another change which we are going to witness, and that change is from upholding rule-based order, democracy, and preventing the ascendancy of autocrats to a more attuned multipolar order in which United States will not attempt to be a unipolar player, but will try and increasingly live with the other power centers. Now, how that change takes place is the crux of the issue. Will it take place? Will the deep state in the United States take on and prevent that from happening? Those are the aspects that we are going to be discussing as I go along. As far as the East is concerned, China is looks at itself as a credible challenger, not so much to contest US, but to ensure US dominated system does not undermine Chinese growth and it is more equitable. I.e., sanctions are not imposed on countries, i.e., the multilateral institutions, IMF, World Banks, etc., are not manipulated, i.e., United States does not start showing its military muscle at the drop of a hat or start deploying 6 fleets and 7 fleets in support of its operations. No, they want their interest basically is to ensure that a period of growth and development takes place, but they were not willing to compromise on their core interests. That is that the assertion of power and influence in Asia, which they see as a core area of their concern, will continue. So what we're going to see is the Chinese are looking for, at this point in time, is a slightly accommodative economic and technological understanding with the Americans, which they will get or not get, we will see, or how it is bartered, transacted, we will see. But we should also be very clear on one issue, that the Chinese power and influence in Asia is not going to decrease, because those are seen as Chinese core interests. Russia will remain an important partner. They talk about creating differences between Russia and China are premature. They do not sort of have much salience at this point in time. At least there are no trends, no signs of that. But the important issue is that the new narrative which is being added into the East capacities, capabilities, along with the global South, is the new orientation of economic power through the BRICS. Now, there was an interesting video which talked about the fact is that the global investors now are not going to look only to the West for investment or going to put askance from the West for investing. They're also going to be talking to the BRICS consortiums, the Development Bank and the others, for investing in BRICS countries, which are now deemed as emerging middle powers and have a great potential to absorb capital and investment. So when we are looking at this whole issue, we are not looking at a the whole issue as far as East is concerned is not so much to contest the West, but to create equitable global order in which both normatives, the West and the East, can live in harmony or at least have their own space. Instead of United States pushing under the Biden administration, with what they have been trying to do in last so many years, is a unipolar global order, which is an extension of 1991 Cold War. In this game, India becomes an important player because, as we understand, India straddles both sides. India has a relationship with the West. We are a part of Quad. We're part of Indo-Pacific. We have a good relationship with the United States. We have a good relationship with the European Union. It's an important trading partner. And we are also a part of a democratic system with the rule-based order, despite the concentrations in the United States sometime about the lack of democracy, etc., etc. All that is aside, but we are seen as a stable democratic player. On the other side is India is seen as a partner in BRICS, an important country, developing country, strong comprehensive national power, growth potential of the highest growth potential in the world, and therefore an important partner with the BRICS in shaping the new order. So for India, this becomes both an opportunity and a challenge. How do we manage our strategic autonomy in these spheres is something which we'll need to think about. Now, what about our wars? Both Ukraine and Middle East are proxy major power contests. We should not have any doubts on that issue. Formerly for security of Europe and, and maintaining Western dominance, which I talked about, and later for energy and security of FLUX. Contiguity with the Mediterranean provides the salience for the West Asia and Middle East contestation. Coming to Europe. Europe is the center of gravity of the Western power and influence. US is concerned about European Union's slow growth and increasing political dysfunctionality and innovation. There are concerns about lack of economic and commercial responsibilities, and European Union and European countries being hesitant to being a major being hesitant in becoming a stakeholder in the changes that are being brought about. Now, this is an element which is going to be uh, an important aspect which is concerning the European leaders at this particular point in time, because this is the area where Trump is going to push the European Union to be a greater stakeholder in their own security and their economic, both economic and political and military security. Now, important issue for the Europeans is that the dilemma which they face right now as Trump comes to power is how do you manage peace in Ukraine? There's going to be a push for peace in Ukraine. The elements of that peace as are emerging right now are threefold: a DMZ like frontline, hard security umbrella for Kiev, plus NATO involvement in enforcing peace. The bottom line over here is this: is none of these are going to be easily sellable to the Russians. Because it's not going to be easily sellable to the Russians, the issue basically comes again is this: how do Trump reach an agreement with the Russians? Because on this hinges the whole issue of Ukraine security. Already attempts are being made to think through this whole problem, but this is a vexed issue which is not going to be easily resolved. On the trade issue with Trump, trade is going to push for sanctions against China. As sanctions go against China, 300% duty, 100% duty, whatever it is, the Chinese are going to push to European Union for greater trade. European Union is trying to impose duties on Chinese goods. 25% it has already put on EV vehicles. But the question basically is this: is what does European Union do to manage these two contradictions? Peace and security and economic development. Now, these are the issues that will have a major role in the in the coming year as far as European Union concerned and its role. But please also remember, despite the fact that this is a pressure on the European Union on and the NATO, they also have some equities. The more and foremost equity is that NATO is the centerpiece of the US-led alliance system. America cannot abandon it. It has to build on it. Despite the fact that America is pushing them to spend 2% of GDP, create more resources, create better weapon systems, etc. And I'm told after the last NATO summit, the order book of the American military industrial complex has increased by $1 trillion. So that's the kind of investments are being talked about. But but the point which is important to do is that both in military and in industrial sense, both United States and the European Union and the NATO are joined at the hip. They cannot break themselves away, because if they do so, that diffuses their power and influence. So this is the dilemma that we'll see. So we will see posturing going on over here. The important thing over here is what is the kind of decisions making they do in this particular scenario. I'll come to Middle East and then I'll take a break and ask General Shankar to have any point. On Middle East, as he rightly brought out, is in deep political and military crisis. Important thing is Israel has totally overwhelmed his Arab resistance. It has totally and critically overwhelmed resistance. Gaza, Hezbollah, Lebanon, Syria are all been overwhelmed. Iran today stands isolated. Development in Syria means Shia belt from Persian Gulf up the Euphrates, up to the Black Sea stands compromised. With the Shia belt compromised, the lifelines of Hezbollah and to the extent Gaza have been cut. So to that extent, the Israel's so-called Yinon plan, which they decided to create a greater Israel, is sort of gaining currency. As far as Iran is concerned, it is a bus sufferer, but here the dilemma lies. There are signs which indicate the Iranians have upgraded their nuclear program. Will they push for a nuclear weapon? And what does it mean? What will it have its impact? That's something which will need to be considered, because if Iran pushes for a nuclear weapon, then Iran will come under direct strikes. And in this case, the Iranian supporters may not be that keen to help, help Iran deal with the situation. So bottom line is Chinese and Russians will be reticent in getting involved directly. Russia too weak, Chinese too far away, and will not like to get involved militarily in an area which is of their secondary concern. It's a more of economic and trade concern, not a military concern. Now this brings me to an interesting issue regarding India. In my view, although these developments are negative from security perspective, they are positive for India from trade and economic and investment perspective. I see I2, G2 improving, greater trade with UAE, more trade with Israel, more Americans getting involved in bigger projects, and we are creating a greater degree of investment opportunities for us, particularly in infrastructure and other areas. In fact, in UAE, we are also developing a strong defense partnership with the UAE. So that's one issue. Then is the IMAC. IMAC, which had gone off the radar and was seen as a compromise arrangement, may well become a reality not too distant down the future, primarily because of the changing security and the political environment. The ability of the Houthis, etc., to deal with this situation will get extremely compromised, as after the Syria, I have no doubt that the Israelis are going to go for the Houthis. So we are going to see a scenario in which the region will, particularly the uh, the Middle East region, will be dominated by the Israelis, particularly in around their area, and also from the Mediterranean and coming to the Gulf. So these developments per se means an economic uh, and industrial opportunity for India, may not be so much as political. As far as the main actors are concerned, General Shankar has already talked about. Is the fact is that uh, both Russia has lost a lot, China has also not gained very much. Saudis will reconsider this whole thing about bonds in yuan and other things, and how much to go along with the Chinese in the new balance of power which is emerging. India will have an important role to play with Saudi Arabia, because we are a partner of choice of them in a number of areas. So it is an issue again which will be a negative impact for both Chinese and the Russians. As far as Turkey is concerned, that is coming as a dominant player, as also brought out by him. It is now going to be dominating from Eastern Mediterranean, Black Sea, and also will impact the Russian control over Tartar space. And so basically what we are now looking at is a reorientation of power and influence, in which the Eastern Bloc has suffered, the Western Bloc through Israel has gained, and a country like India, we have we have got more economic and developmental opportunities. I'll stop here, because next section I'm going to come to India-US relations, but I'll stop here if General
Yes, sir.
Shankar has any.
So I think uh, brought out a lot of important things. That there's a new balance of power emerging, and like we were discussing before this podcast, and this new balance of power is largely going to be driven by what's happened in Syria over the past 2 weeks.
True,
And
absolutely.
And this new balance of power itself is a little hazy. That's itself in a flux. We don't know which side the dice will fall. We'll have to see. But broadly, what you have said is what thing is, you know, Ashraf Jahangir Qazi, who is Pakistani, today,
Yeah,
today he's written something, a very nice piece on this. He says USA, Israel, and Turkey are the winners in this game so far. Iran, China, and Russia are the losers in this game so far. But then that's to be seen, right? And for a Pakistani to write this, I think is there's some clarity
no,
in his talk.
you should know Ashraf Jahangir Qazi is a good friend, and I met him a
Okay.
number of times in my track to dialogue. But he's a very balanced guy, and you can
Yeah.
expect that from him because he
Yeah.
doesn't get carried away by rhetoric and by
The-
extreme views.
Yeah.
Okay, now
And
I'll shift.
so
Sorry.
I just want to make a point. The question which I have till now is, do you think this business of BRICS, which people talk of, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, do you think that will sustain itself or will it go into almost oblivion with the new developments which
No,
have happened?
it's okay. The short answer is its effectiveness will come down a huge amount. Uh, mm, uh, and I, you see, the Iranians have what they call a look east policy, and because the look west policy wasn't working because they were coming against roadblocks everywhere, so they had a look east policy. The look east policy basically includes India, China, and Russia. Now, in this look east policy, India was not a very important player because India, although we have a good relationship with Iran, but we were concerned about the sanctions and our oil offtake after what they did to us in the two oil fields that they had promised us and they didn't give to us. It had come down completely. As far as the Russians are concerned, Russians are supporting them through INSTC, etc., because it's an important trade corridor. So they are involved in the Russians. But they, as you know, more than I do, sir, that the Russians are already engaged militarily, economically, etc., fighting a war and keeping the country running. Chinese are the only guys, and Chinese are exploiting them. Chinese were exploiting them for oil at low cost. They're not giving them the money, and they will promise $400 billion. If you recollect, there was one agreement signed that China will invest $400 billion in Iran. So when you listen to these big stories and you see these newspaper headings, you should always discount with 1 0 to start with, and then maybe reduce the second zero also because these things do not happen. These things do not happen, sir. And these are all, and these are all played
Big
up.
talks.
And I was telling a researcher this evening who was talking to me on Vietnam issues or something. I said, yeah, do not get carried away by statements here. You see how much of that gets implemented, and do not get carried away by the MOUs. There are every sensible, reasonable office in any of the ministries. I mean, foreign ministries in the world. You will have a very 2-3 drawers full of MOUs which have never been implemented. So we must be very careful in trying to assess. So I totally agree with you. The crink is gonna, but the North Korea Russia angle
That is
is
a different
something
story.
different issue which we need
Yeah.
to. Okay, so anything else, sir?
No, no, so please go ahead.
Okay. Now I'll come to India-US relations. I just covered three things. First is we must understand that India-US relations under Trump flourished. Trump was the guy who got most of the framework agreements sorted out. Trump was also the person who provided us with intelligence and some equipment during the initial stages of the May 2020 Chinese intrusion, and was always supportive of us in military terms. But we did not, or during his period, we did not enter into any major collaborative or co-develop and co-production agreements with him. That's an important issue. When Biden came to power, and in June 2023, President Biden and Prime Minister Modi they entered into a major agreements, and in that discourse, the highlights were defense cooperation. And we signed number of agreements. We signed for Predators, we signed for uh, C-130 Hercules, we signed for more aircrafts, and then we signed for the G414 engine deal, which is a part of which was supposed to be a flagship co-production agreement. Then we also came about, we did ISET, where we both decided to engage each other in developing emerging technologies. And then we also started doing defense innovation work primarily because, and in defense innovation work, people just get carried away by this. Again, here we have to understand very clearly. In this defense innovation work was a very interesting perspective of pushing Indian private sector to innovate in the area of defense and produce systems or subsystems which can be usable. Here, the problem basically has been, and that's something which we must understand, is that while our innovators have been very good, our youngsters have been very good. We have, I have been to a couple of these meetings, but the point is, who has benefited from them? How much have we benefited from them is something which we need to take cognizance of. I'm not going to say more than that. But it's an area which we needs to study a little more as to who has gained from the innovation cycle. So the question basically is this: is these agreements were signed, but where are they today? Nearly year plus down the line, they have been very slow and tardy in implementation. We have not reached closure in any of these issues, apart from the fact that we have signed an agreement for Predators, 31 Predators, which is going to come up in 27, 28 onwards, which we will buy. But please remember one thing. United States is absolutely keen with us on purchase agreements. You want to purchase anything, you can go ahead and buy it. No issue at all. But if you want to do co-production and co-development, that's where the production time comes in, and that's where we are struggling with the GE on 414 issue. Although I'm told that a lot of aspects have been sorted out, but the cost of each engine has gone up by $1 million, gone up to $1 million. So we are the price escalation will take place. How much of that will come up? How much of IPRs will be shared is something which is there. And added to that, sir, we have these programs of regulatory systems of the United States which are hugely complicated. People just don't understand them. SOSA, we said we went all to town, we have signed SOSA. SOSA signing means nothing. If there is a added agreement or or defense agreement which ensures that an Indian company can trade in United States, creates an innovation thing and sells it to the United States, it needs that agreement. And then on top of that, there is an ITAR. So the issue basically is that we have been caught up in the regulatory system. So what do I expect? As far as this defense cooperation with the United States is concerned, I expect President Trump to be as transactional as he was in his earlier term and continue with the transactional part. On co-production and co-development, I'm afraid the jury is still out. And this jury is out primarily because how much does the United States connect this issue with the whole issue of democratic slide down, issues with Niger and other Panoon cases, etc., and get carried away by. Although, mind you, the people who are coming into power are not so much anti-India, or they understand. I mean, one person was the head of the Indo-US caucus, the Rubio, who's going to be the
Walls,
Secretary of
sir.
State. Waltz, sorry,
Walls.
Waltz, who's the NSA.
Yeah.
Waltz is NSA, no? Sorry, NSA.
Yes, sir.
So things are positive, but when people sit in the chair and look at it from the national interest, things things are different. So the second issue is, which we have to concern about, is that the United States was very unhappy with India's Russia relationship. I written a big piece on that. See, they are unhappy because India was off taking the oil, which is an absolute sham and lie. India was off taking oil, and who was buying that oil from us was the
Europe.
European Union. So, I mean, the whole idea was not idea. Idea was the symbolism of India in league with Russia was something which was seen as an affront by these people. So they initially said, okay, we'll live by it. But towards the latter stages of the Biden administration, 2023, 2024, when I was in US this year, summer, I've been going there every summer for this thing, for our meetings, the it was signs were very apparent. There was angst against India for supporting Russia. And this angst was building up not so much against India per se. The angst was building up because despite billions of dollars of investment in Ukraine, there were no gains being seen, and Russia was seeing more and more powerful. So they had to find somebody, a fall guy, and they were looking at us as fall guy. Now, how much of this will happen, I do not know. I do not know how much this will this play out. But one thing I am sure, and what is this thing is that India's role in any peace process between Ukraine and Russia would become slightly more limited than it was being looked upon as earlier, because now in his own transactional mode, Mr. Trump wants to bring in the Chinese. Now, having talked about America like this, I would like to also highlight this is that there are huge contradictions in our relationship, apart from what I've talked about. There is a belief in certain lobbies in India that Indo-Pacific has not brought about any strategic gains to India. The entire Indo-Pacific strategy, although encompasses the entire Indo-Pacific, starting from the east coast of Africa to the Western Pacific, essentially is centered around East Asia and increasingly to South China Sea to the Philippines. Beyond that, there is no security architecture of concern except from some maritime domain initiative, IPMDI, Indo-Pacific Maritime Domain Initiative initiatives, some limited gray shipping, this thing, sharing, intelligence sharing, etc. But it is not very clear what they will, what are the gains to India. Whatever are the gains to India is by terms of purchasing equipment from United States. No doubt that equipment has been sold to us, but it is not nothing America has done to upgrade our security. There is nothing has been done to upgrade our security. No, that has been purchased by India to upgrade its own security against payment, like we bought Rafales from France. So there's nothing. The second issue is there is a perception is that is United States actually keen in seeing a strong and credible India emerging in the in the middle 30s, uh, and because then the issue becomes about is that what will be the nature of challenge? Will India and China remain competitors, or how will the thaw between India and China really play out, and what impact will they have on the regional balance of power in the Indo-Pacific? Now, these are the issues that are up on the table, and if you are looking at the security calculus of 2025, these will have to be taken cognizance of. Okay, now the last point on Indo-US and the whole strategic equations over here, which I'll talk about, is the seriousness of United States attempt to sabotage the Indian neighborhood. This is a very serious issue. We've seen what has happened in Bangladesh. We've seen the advisories in Sri Lanka. We've seen the investments in coming in Nepal. We've seen what's happening. I mean, as far as Pakistan is concerned, I don't know how many of you are aware that Americans do not share any intelligence with us on Pakistan. Zero. So the question basically we have to ask ourselves is this, is that how unhappy are we with the American interference in our strategic neighborhood? And will Trump be a little much more concerned about this thing, much more understanding about these issues, and understanding about India's concern is something that we'll need to work on. And this is one more area that we need to be looking at as we move into 2025. Now, coming to India-China relations, fundamentally, we must look at the fact is relations are driven by competing interests. That's a standard ballpoint line. We should not get away from this issue. Chinese look at India as a strategic rival. Indo-US collaboration series is directed against China. India's growing military, regional, economic power is seen as propelled by US to contain China. These are the fundamentals. And last but most important is there is lack of mutual trust. What are the Chinese expectations from India? Economic and trade investments at present, given its economy constraints, given the fact that it is being pushed on every direction, be it United States, be it Europe, because as General Shankar in his various podcasts have already highly pointed out, is the fact is that the Chinese continue to be an export-driven economy, and it is not an internal consumption economy as yet. An internal consumption economy, and this is what Chinese are finding it to their horror, is that they cannot generate internal consumption even if they want to. So this is the problem they are facing. So they are desperate for investments and trade. And India is seen as a glorious player. Now, India's dilemma lies is this, that if India de-risks completely or decoupled completely from China, it becomes dependent on the Western supply chains, ASEAN Western supply chains. If it couples with China, allows investments in open house investments, or say less constrained investments, but large scale investments in particularly areas that we are looking for in critical sectors, then we are dependent on the Chinese. How do we manage this? This is going to be, and because, sirs, the important part to understand is this: time is not going to wait for us. We have a window of 5 to 7 years. We have to push our economy fast. We already seen that some constraints, how they're impacting our economy. 5.8% GDP growth is not a good sign. So if all this is happening, we have to take a call. We have to take a call. And this is where and another challenge for India in 2025 is how do we start our process of improvement of bilateral relationships, particularly in economic arena, and how we should structure them. Then my last point on China is that we must understand the Chinese have large number of leverages, which we have allowed them to create. Number one leverage is the boundary dispute that we all understand very much. Second is the maritime challenge, which is also coming up. That's something we understand. But important part is China, we have allowed China to pressurize through our neighbors. BRI investments, inroads, infrastructure development, etc., have allowed our neighbors to play us against the Chinese, and Chinese inroads have increasing by the day. So there is a policy of what I call of continental encirclement of India being put in place. Now, continental encirclement of India through our neighborhood along with major power projection in the Indian Ocean region and through bases and places in the IOR, is something which we need to take cognizance of. And we need to prepare ourselves to deal with it. And I earlier talked about the fact that the Americans have no interest in this. So it's a three-tier jeopardy for us. We have to understand this. We have to deal with this. And important thing is, as far as the Chinese are concerned, is that they look at us as a strategic challenge. They do not look at us as an enemy, but look at us as a strategic challenge. Now, our problem is, how do we look at China in a long-term basis? How do we deal with China on a long-term basis? Do we look at it from the Western prism? Do we look at it from our own prism? Do we look at it from the regional prism? How do we look at it? And what are the advantages that we want to gain out of that engagement with the Chinese? And what is our strategic vision vis-a-vis our strategic aims vis-a-vis the Chinese engagement is something which we need to be looking at as we move into the 2025. Southeast Asia, all I will say is the scenario is not very good. We claim Act East policy, etc. Our trade is reasonable, $80-90 billion, something $95 billion. But nothing is compared to, just to give you an idea, the trade between China and ASEAN is $982 billion. Just to give you an idea. So the question is, ASEAN is very much part of the Chinese economic colony. I call China, ASEAN as Chinese economic colony. And also the fact is that it is becoming increasingly a military colony. So from our perspective, if we want to become a major regional power and a middle power and cross over to South China Sea, into the South China Sea, we have to enhance our credible relationships with our ASEAN partners. Most importantly, three: Vietnam, Indonesia, and Singapore. Malaysia also. So these four countries, we need to improve our relationship if we want to have a credibility on this. My last point on this issue is India's neighborhood. We are in a sorry state. Sorry to say. I already highlighted during my talk. We have got now a Bangladesh issue. With Pakistan, we are still kutty. We have there are we although there was some hope that some kind of modus vivendi will be worked out when Mr. Jaishankar went to attend SCO summit. It has not happened. Nepal, they have just shown us their true colors. Visit is not so much important. Oli was expected to go. He's from Marxist Leninist party, so he has to go to China first. That's not an issue. Issue is that he was poking us by calling Tibet as Zhang. He was taking the Chinese name of Tibet. That's a poke. And also the fact is that when the Chinese don't play up with them, they don't come to us. They look at Americans who have put in just something like $500 million in some development funding over there. And what do? We invest in their power, we invest in their infrastructure, but we get nothing out of it. Similarly, the Chinese are pushing hard on the Bhutanese. How long the Bhutanese will be able to get the pressure is something which we'll need to be looking at. So this is the scenario in our neighborhood. Pakistan issue, serious issue. And like I said in my last discussion with General Shankar, please do not look at Pakistan as something of a failed state. It is not a failed state. Economically a failed state. Internally a failed state. But it's military and strategically and not a failed state. And it has been propped up hugely by the Chinese. So from our perspective, if we do not want to do trade and we are only looking at a security aspects with Pakistan, The issue is that we need to upgrade our strategic deterrence, both conventional and nuclear. We cannot look at China, Pakistan as something which we can handle easily. So this is an issue that we need to be looking at. And I'll stop here. And before I come to the implications, I've got written some implications. So I'll come to that. I'll just General Shankar to, you know.
Yes, sir. I think you've given out a very, very clear idea of where India stands in this changing environment. And if I put it in priority wise, based on what we have spoken, I think our first priority is we need to be tuned to what's happening in our neighborhood, be realistic about it, and have a clear policy as to how to deal with them. Because if we don't handle our neighborhood well, the rest of the problems will not run up, not vanish. And this business of continental encirclement has to be broken. And this continental encirclement is not only by China, to a large extent, it's by USA also. Because the way it's interfered in our neighborhood is not, I mean, it need no iteration. The issue with China, how do we deal with China? Might have had a thaw with China, but are you going to trade with it? Are you going to be a security, adversary to it? How are you going to stop its forays? How are you going to stop its entry into the neighborhood? And how are you going to deal with Pakistan? Whether you're going to deal with Pakistan through China, or you're going to deal with China through Pakistan, or you're going to take on both, is an issue which we have spoken of, and I'm very cognizant of it. Because, like you said, and I completely endorse this whole story, that Pakistan has taken a different meaning in the past 6 to 8 months, and we need to be alive to that, right? And the third is our difficult relationship with USA. We started 5 years back when Biden came, as everything good, and everything went good for a good part of the 3 year tenure of for the first 3 years of Biden. For the past 1 year, our relationship has only gone down. And will it turn around with Mr. Trump is a $1 million question, because Trump has already indicated his transactional approach to everything. So if it's transactional, all this talk of a lot of Indians in his cabinet and all goes up in smoke. In any case, we must remember, because I see a lot of news in our media saying, "Oh, the Trump cabinet has 4 Indians or 5 Indians or 6 Indians." It doesn't matter whether they're 5, 6, 10. They're all Americans sworn to the American Constitution, and they're sworn to protect American interests. And if it is an Indian interest, so be it. And then, of course, our equation with ASEAN, which we need to improve. These are 4 major things. A thing which you touched upon, which is, I think, very, very important, is that we need to up our strategic deterrence. I'll put it this way, sir. I think as a country, we need to re-look at our deterrence capabilities, whether it is strategic deterrence or non-strategic deterrence, non-contact deterrence, or contact deterrence. All 4. What is it that you want to achieve, and how you want to structure those deterrence? Do you want to have economic deterrence alone, military deterrence, strategic deterrence? I think we need to have a policy, and we need to have a discussion about it. And one of these days, maybe next week sometime, we could discuss
Yeah.
what is India's deterrence outlook and policies and thought processes. I think is a very important thing. We'll get back to that. I thought these were the issues which you brought out very well, and I would like to tell all you viewers who are seeing it, this is a very, very important podcast. We can talk of Syria, we can talk of China, we can talk of everything, but to give you an overview of where things stand, I think we've got the best man on the job. Sir, please continue.
Okay, so I'll just come out. What are the broad implications? I mean, just a couple of them. I don't want to bore you enough. I talked enough.
No, that's okay.
Bottom line is this: as far as United States-India relationship is concerned, or let's put it the Indo-Pacific concerned, we have to take cognizance of what policy shifts that occur under the Trump administration. There are 2 aspects which we need to look at. Aspect number one, if transactional relationship with China ensues into lowering down of the military threat and scaling down of the military threat, then what does its implication have for us? The second issue that emerges is, if he talks about securitization of of Quad, making it into an Asian NATO, then does India join it or India does not join it? Because it will have serious repercussions for us. And please also remember, when I say serious repercussions for India, we tend to look at Quad as some kind of a joint at the hip kind of a quadrilateral
It's not.
institution. But please, it is Quad is 3+1. There are three allies plus one strategic partner. Three allies who are contiguously located in a zone where there is a total American influence, and one partner which is far away, which is standalone. So we need to be cognizant of this issue. How do we handle this issue is going to be a challenge. And along with that, the second challenge that we have to face with the United States is, I'm repeating myself, is how do we structure our strategic partnership, particularly in co-production and co-development issue? Purely because if you are reading the newspaper, which I'm sure you are, there are new and strong overtures coming to us from the Russians. Russians are offering us, opening up the crown jewels to you, to that new radar, over the horizon radar system which they are offering us, which is 8,000 kilometers range. OTHs are important issues because OTHs can help you pick up targets far away. The over the horizon radar capability of the Chinese have been most useful to it in monitoring the sea lines of communication. So how do we correlate these things? How do we fill in the gaps? How do we fill in the gaps? Now we are talking about two SSNs to be developed by 2035, 2035. Are two enough? And what purpose for? So, I mean, there is a lot of work going on within the system, theaterization, capability enhancement, threat assessment, etc. My only thing is we need to take cognizance of the fact. Since I'm a net assessor, that's my area of expertise. I look at things 15 to 20 years ahead. I look at things 15 to 20 years primarily because these are the developmental cycles we are looking at. And recently, a friend sent me a paper, which is extremely good paper, which I shared with General Kumar, of scientific development made simple. He simply is talking about the fact that decide on what you want. Develop a scenario, where it is going to be used, decide what you want, and go full steam ahead to develop it. No dithering here or there or the other. So bottom line is this. The second issue is India has large number of strategic vulnerabilities. We have to recognize them. We are dependent on raw materials. We depend on supply chains. We depend on imports. Our trade is increasing. We have a $700-800 billion trade overall. We go to probably $1 trillion plus. We have to secure our sea lines of communication. We have to create boats. We have to create shipping facilities, etc. So, if you want to be a big player, you have to think big and resolve issues credibly. When I say credible resolution, is some issue you resolve by development, some capacity, creating capacity, some issues you resolve by making partnerships. And I discussed during my talk is how West Asia might become an opportunity for us. Exploit it. How do we exploit Southeast Asia opportunity? We need to do that. So that's what I'm saying. Relationship with US remains consequential. But the fissures of Biden administration will need to be addressed. I think India cannot compromise on this issue with the United States. We cannot allow interference in our internal affairs. We have a respect for their system, and they must respect our system. And finding flaws in each other's systems is not the best way. We remain neighborhood vulnerability, which we talked about. Neighborhood vulnerability is a critical issue for us, and we need to address this issue. I, for one, am saying is that like Foreign Secretary went to Bangladesh to talk to them, I think the time has also come to offer some overtures to Pakistan. We do not want to create a Frankenstein on our borders. We do not want to create a state where the military, which is already under pressure, becomes so hostile as they all try and externalize threat by invoking some kind of a stupid conflict with us. So we need to be cautious about this thing. So we need to, and we also need to send a clear message to our other partners in our neighborhood that India is there for better ties and relations with them, but India also has their red lines. And India's red lines cannot be crossed. We have to send a firm and clear message. We are there for cooperation. We are good for partnership, but we shall not compromise on our interests. Thank you very much. I'll stop here.
Thanks a lot, sir. I thought you covered the whole lot very well. We'll take a few questions and then we'll move ahead. First, I'd like to thank Srinivaslu Chittamalla for becoming a member. Welcome to the Ghana Shot family. Yeah, this is a very interesting thing. Today, YouTube muted Jaipur Dialogues and other nationalist channels. Please don't touch Pakistan and Bangla topic for the next 2 days. Well, let me give my view on this so that people understand, those who see. Mine is, this Ghana Shot is not a nationalist channel. It's an Indian channel meant for defense and strategic affairs of India. It's not nationalist in the pure nationalist manner, right? And everything is pretty balanced. We're not going to go berserk, calling Bangladesh names or Pakistan names. So to that extent, be rest assured. In any case, the way things are going today, please understand where other channels are probably discussing Pakistan and Bangladesh because there's more mirch masala in those. We are talking of something more serious for India, which is more consequential to India. We've not left Pakistan or Bangladesh out, we've spoken about it, but there are issues beyond Bangladesh and India for Bangladesh and Pakistan for India. And there are huge changes happening. If you want to be a third pole or fourth pole or whatever it is, you want to live up to the picture with the Chinese chap has envisioned that you are one of the 4 big players in the world. And you have to be clear about what's happening in the globe and what's happening. And, like we just started, something happened in Syria 2 weeks back. It's going to reorder the global affairs and we're going to talk of it. And that's what I'm going to talk of tomorrow, incidentally. So don't worry. We're going to address bigger issues. We're not going to touch on emotive issues at nationalist level the way it is. Also remember, this is a completely apolitical channel. We are neither right nor left. We stand in the center, and the center is India. India's interests. India's national interests as enshrined in the Constitution of India. Not by any ruling party or unruling party or non-ruling party or regional party manifestos. That doesn't think. Okay. Yeah. Again, I'm not going to ask. We'll take questions which are pertinent to the topic, and because I see most of you are asking questions related to Bangladesh or Pakistan, as if these are the only 2 countries in the whole world which affect our, security and our well-being. Let me assure you, both of them don't. I mean, before sir, I'd like your view. If suppose theoretically we just shut down our equation with Pakistan and Bangladesh and have everything and cut tea with them, Can we survive by going good with others and solving our other problems? Of course, we need to solve them, but in a hypothetical situation. Are these our first problems or probably our last problems? Your views, sir.
Very difficult question. No, but I mean, we cannot afford to. We cannot afford to have kutti with anybody. I mean, there are
That's okay.
economic.
But do
But
we have to focus only on them, or we have a whole other basket to
no, I
focus
mean,
on?
those are being managed by us diplomatically. I mean, there is no issue with that. They are being managed by us. I mean, despite whatever Bangladesh might talk about, the fact is that it has got a $13 billion trade with us, and that's all in our favor. If we send them now, what you're seeing is Tripura is certainly getting a huge amount of orders. Who's suffering? Those guys are suffering. They are grandstanding. Please understand this fact. Bangladesh is grandstanding at a particular point in juncture, and their grandstanding will continue till 20th of January, or till such time we hear a good statement or a bad statement from United States, and that will define the further grandstanding. They believe that they are saying कि हम मारे गए kind of a scenario will bring about more people and more saviors for them. Now, another interesting part is they're looking for saviors only in the West. Yeah? They're not looking for saviors anywhere else. China has got different interests. So Chinese are interested in a different way. But please understand that Chinese are also cautious. Chinese do not want to cross a particular line vis-a-vis India's interests are concerned, as we have seen in Sri Lanka. We've seen in Sri Lanka when India's interest was being compromised, they held back. They did not push so much. So the question is, we have to be, as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan is involved in its internal destruction. We true that. But the fact of the matter is, Pakistan is a nuclear state. Pakistan is a military state. The military is investing hugely in weapon systems and other. I'm not saying that we are worried about Pakistan. I'm not saying we are. What I'm trying to say is the nuisance value or the destructive value of a state which has got nothing to lose is much higher than a state which has got economic and development agenda on its say. So if you have an economic and development agenda, you will be more rational, you will be more cautious, and you will be more forthcoming in dialogue. So here I am also conscious of the fact that the Pakistani wants dialogue for dialogue's sake. It's a part of the political constituency of Pakistan. But my take is that this is a dilemma that we face, and we have to sort it out. We can
Yeah.
keep pushing it under the carpet. We can do it, no issue. Let's do it. But for how long is something which we need to consider, and what are the consequences of that we need to consider. Please also remember one thing is that on all this drama, there is a huge Chinese investment which is coming into Pakistan, and Pakistan is slowly emerging as a forward location of the Chinese military strategy, particularly the planned strategy for the West, for the Gulf, as well as to the east coast of Africa. So 23 to 25 trillion dollar economy of China, most trade going this way, they need to protect it. So this is something which we need to understand. They understand the dynamics of geoeconomics and geopolitics on that security dynamics is something which we need to understand. So it's not that we want to talk to China for Pakistan's sake. No, we have interest in ensuring a peaceful and stable Pakistan. That every single government in India has said so. We are not saying that you go down the tube, because then we know what will happen to the very nukes. Yeah, so that's something which we are concerned about. Yeah. This is a scenario we play. I have had a
We'll get ahead
talk
with
with
it,
the
sir.
Pakistani SPD chief. In a meeting, he openly declared that if push comes to shove, we will use nuclear weapons. So I had to politely tell him, sir, we also have nuclear weapons. You want to lose your entire country, you can use the first nuclear weapon against us, but I don't know how many more you will use against us after that. So please understand that logic. So there is and they are pressurized from all sides. Pakistan is not a country which is only India centric. This is Afghan Taliban, TTP is this thing. Baluchis are they are in a bad shape. Please do not worry about Pakistan. The only thing is, how do we